The Texas Rangers was a 1936 black and white Western starring Fred MacMurray, Jack Oakie, and Lloyd Nolan. And this was actually remade a little bit later as the movie The Streets of Laredo with William Holden in 1949. And I actually did a review of that recently on my channel here. And while I was researching that film, I saw, hey, this was an earlier version of this same story, so I wanted to check it out. And honestly, both films are very similar. The story, the characters, if you watch both, you can really see, you can put them side by side. They're almost identical in a lot of ways. In the film, Fred MacMurray plays the character Jim Hawkins. Yes, this is Fred MacMurray of My Three Sons fame. Jack Oakie plays Henry B. Wahoo Jones. What a cool name. Lloyd Nolan also plays Sam Polka Dot McGee. And Jean Parker is in the movie as Amanda, who is Jim's love interest. So the story is basically the three criminals are working together, and they're good friends, buddies with each other, and they'll do things like one of them will be a stagecoach driver, and he's bringing some passengers along, and then the other guys will hold up the stagecoach and, steal all the goods and stuff. So the stagecoach driver is actually one of the criminals, and, they have this system going where they're just kind of ripping off people. And it was funny too, this character who plays Wahoo, I liked him. He's sort of the comic relief of the film. And at one point he is singing Bury Me Not on the Lone Prairie, and it's just like something from a Bugs Bunny cartoon. And in fact, I'll link the Bugs Bunny cartoon below. And it's always so funny to me is that a lot of these films, well, they predate Bugs Bunny, obviously, in the Looney Tunes. And I think that was what, Bugs Bunny was spoofing in his cartoon. So it's funny to me to see that, elements like that in these older films. So as the story continues, Jim and Wahoo are separated from Sam, and they go to Texas to look for him. And while they're there, they're planning one of their stagecoach heists, and they have a run-in with an actual Texas Ranger. And Wahoo pretty much realizes early on, whoa, don't mess with this guy, because, he'll shoot you dead pretty fast. And one thing leads to another, and the two of them, Jim and Wahoo, end up joining as Texas Rangers. However, it's for less than noble reasons. They're thinking that they can use this to manipulate the system. In fact, one of their first missions is to go and, pursue some cattle rustlers. While they do this, they run into their old friend Sam. And he's living with a Spanish woman. And over dinner, the three of them plan how they're going to basically game the Texas Rangers system by giving Sam inside information. So on the way back, Jim and Wahoo, they come across, it's like a settlement that's being circled by Indians, and there's a big fight going on. And they join in with the Texas Rangers in this big fight. And the Rangers, at one point, they're outnumbered by these Indians, so they take cover on a mountainside. And at this point, several of the Indians start rolling boulders down on them. And I got to admit, that was a little bit silly. These big styrofoam boulders going down the hill. And the film goes on. Jim gets his next assignment to bring in a crime boss. And he arrives in this small town and goes to a bar where he meets with the judge, who is played by George Gabby Hayes. And I love this guy. He's so cool. He's like the crazy old grizzled prospector character, the go, Gabby, what have you gotten into? That guy. I've seen him, the more I watch these old westerns, the more I see him show up, and he's great. He's just this character actor who plays, the goofy old timer, the prospector. Now here he's actually playing a judge. So he's a little bit younger, he's sharply dressed and stuff, but it's still Gabby Hayes. So it's great to see him in this film. So what Jim says is they're going to have a courtroom trial in this bar, and Gabby Hayes is going to, conduct it as the judge. And they're going to put this crime boss on trial. And it was at this part of the film where we see Jim, the Fred MacMurray character. He really starts to, it feels like he's become this Texas Ranger. He's not really gaming the system anymore. Now he believably is serving as a ranger. And it's kind of cool. This is, I guess, the transformation part. At least that's how I understood it. And he, leads this court trial against this crime boss. He gets a local witness to confess that this boss had killed a man, and he gets sent off to prison. Everybody in town cheers. But there's a scene where a couple of the crime boss's goons try to gun him down. And thankfully, his friend Sam happens to be there, and he saves him by shooting the two guys before they can shoot him. So townsfolk are all grateful. Justice has come to town. And then we have a quick exchange between, Sam and his friend Jim. And it's basically, Jim says, look, you got to get out of town. We're going to go separate ways, So Sam is going to keep on with a life of crime. Jim is now taking the noble path. So similar to the other film in a lot of ways. So we cut back to a little bit of the romance story with Jim and Amanda. And it's kind of a cute little love story that takes place. And then we get to the point where Jim gets orders from the head ranger that he has to now go after his old friend Sam. So Jim tries to refuse, and he even threatens to resign. And once he does, the head ranger guy reveals that, they found out who he is, they know his past, they know that he's buddies with the Sam character. So Jim is promptly arrested and thrown in jail. And meanwhile, his buddy Wahoo goes after Sam, under the pretense that they're still friends. But, well, I'm going to stop the review here, because I really love how the story wraps up and how the friendship changes at the end of the film. And these three buddies who kind of all went their different directions, how things kind of wrap up and how they resolve their conflict with one another. And again, it's very much like Streets of Laredo. And there's a really cool, tense encounter, again, between the character of Sam and Wahoo. But I don't want to give too much more away. It's a great ending to the film. And this was an entertaining Western. It wasn't perfect, but definitely had some good performances. And it's a good story about characters who are friends and what happens when some go good and some stay bad. It's worth checking out.